Okay, you might notice I'm not tall, nor do I have an accent. That's because John's gone. I am filling in for him today. So with me filling in, you get a plug for the weather challenge. I run the weather challenge. It's a competition across a bunch of different schools across North America, and not only schools, but also like Air Force academies, things like that. And every week for both the fall and spring semester, if you sign up, you submit a forecast Monday through Thursday, and you join the national competition. If you would click challenge for me and submit forecast. This is what it looks like, really super easy. You only have to submit one forecast a day, but if you want, you could submit the entire week in one go and just be done with it on Monday. All you have to submit is the daily high, the daily low, the wind speed, and how much precipitation you think each station is going to get. They move the station each week. Whoever's participating, they get to vote on where the region you'd like the station to be in. And yeah, they have some pretty interesting ones. A couple of years ago, they picked one that got a direct hit from a hurricane, and so we lost all data. That was interesting. They don't do that anymore. But yeah, it's really fun, really cheap to sign up. If you have any questions, let me know. I also sent out an email on Tuesday. I'll send out another one as a reminder. Yeah, please sign up. It's super fun.
Is that the wind speed at a certain time, or like an average for the day, or what do they do?
It is the max wind speed that's not a gust.
Got it. And you forgot to introduce yourself. We know you're not John,
Oh,
but
yeah.
who are you?
I'm Libby. I'm in John's lab.
Thank you.
Okay. So if we can go to the surface observation map, please. Oh, actually, could you go back? Sorry. Go back one, and then all surface plots, and then can I have the -1 hour?
Sure.
Okay. So this is from about an hour ago, but the conditions still kind of hold. Kind of a lot going on at the surface level. You can see up here in Canada, there's this decent low that's been chugging along. It's got a cold front that extends all the way from up in Canada, down through Nebraska, etc. I thought this was cool because you can see this one really in the isobars. So if we have a low, you can see where this outer isobar kind of dips down, and this other isobar is reaching up toward it. A lot of times that is indicative of a cold front. So a really quick way to pick it up, to see a cold front, is look for this pattern. You can also really see the change in temperatures and winds on either side of this front. In front of the front, winds are all southerly, generally southerly. And then on the other side of it, they're starting to trend, some of them are trending northerly, slowly shifting upward. And there's also a decent temperature difference. Like out here, on the border of Minnesota and North Dakota, they're currently sitting at 77, whereas just on the other side of the state, they're only hitting 60 degrees. So a 17-degree temperature difference across one state. That's pretty notable. If we scroll down a little bit, please, you can see that the entire southeastern U.S. has some form of cloud cover today. Most have fully complete covered skies. Others have, 3/4 mostly covered. There's scattered precip obs kind of everywhere. This is the remnant of Francine. It started down the Gulf, but it has slowly made its way northward. It's now kind of sitting over Arkansas and Missouri. It was dumping rain, but it is pretty much almost out of moisture, as we'll see here in a second. Yeah, it's had a pretty big impact on southern U.S., Louisiana, Alabama. There's been a lot of flooding, a lot of issues with that. It's pretty notable. It is no longer a hurricane. It's classified as a post-tropical cyclone, but still significant. And it's going to hang around a little longer for the next couple days. Can we go to satellite, please? And then goes East Conus, but in color, please. Okay, so this is goes east in natural color. You can see Francine still hanging out, all the clouds cycling in that characteristic post-tropical cyclone shape. You can see we're kind of getting some of the remnants off of Francine, which is why the sky is kind of so weird today. And another reason why the sky is so weird today and the past few days is that you can still see we've got a little bit of wildfire smoke from all the fires out in the west and in Canada just kind of hanging around over us. Most of the smoke, which if you paid attention earlier this week and looked up, the skies have been really weird. That's because there has been a whole bunch of smoke just hanging out in our upper atmosphere. To my knowledge here, it didn't really reach the surface like we saw last summer, which was annoying for a lot of people. So that's good, but see, it's kind of like blurry-ish. That's all the smoke reaching kind of New York, Pennsylvania, all over the Northeast. Yeah, so there's Francine. There's a lot of disturbances going on the East Coast. Being honest, it's kind of a mess down there with everything with Francine and all of its aftermath. There's a lot going on. If we look down here in the Gulf of California, off of Baja, California, you see there is another tropical storm forming that's going to head up this way. I think it's in the early stages, but if you look really closely, you can see all of the convection building, all the tops and things like that. That is Tropical Storm Ileana. So it's in its pretty early stages. Yeah, it looks like they expect it to propagate northwards. It's also got this little weird kind of cloud streak associated with it. I don't know, it almost looks like a gust front, but we decided in the lab earlier that it's most likely not that. It's just kind of weird. And then you can also see the storms and clouds associated with that front that is connected to the low over central Canada. We saw all of those winds. They're pretty much straight southerly, and you can see that in the clouds as well. They're all being infected pretty strongly northward. If you look, they're moving at a pretty quick rate. So that's pretty cool. One thing, if you'll notice up here, it's a little hard to see right now. It's a little blurry up here, but if we go to, I wrote this down. Oh, the northeast U.S. view, you might have to back out. Oh, over it, yeah. And then, yes, oh, could you do 6 hours, please? I know it's half cut off, but this is really cool. Okay, yeah, so 6 hours a little, shorter, at least when I was looking at it, because it's night, so we don't get this kind of color view at night. But look at all of these. Can you guys see them from the back? All these like weird little, let it restart here at the beginning, all these little streaks and stuff that are kind of forming. This is fog that we can see from space, which is really cool. It's in all these little valleys. You can almost see how the valleys like branch out and meander through all of the states. That's fog from this morning. I think that's pretty cool. It almost shows you an exact copy of the topography down there. And then if you hit play again, you can see that it disappears pretty quickly. The higher up the sun gets, warmer the temperature, the fog's gone.
Smoke shows up a lot better at sunrise and sunset too.
Yes, exactly.
You can really see it. It's not going away, it's just the sun's not scattering as much of it.
Yeah, this big blur up here is all the smoke that's just hanging around. So pretty cool. Okay, could we look at the CONUS radar, please? So here's the radar with everything we just looked at. You see Francine, it's not really producing much rain anymore. It's mostly kind of run out of moisture. The clouds are still hanging around, but other than the few blips over Arkansas, Missouri Boot Heel, a couple in Illinois and Indiana, not a lot of rain left. So they were spared, whereas all of the regions down here got a whole bunch of rain. There's these 2 disturbances on the East Coast as well, kind of associated with Francine. They're hitting both Missouri and the rest of the East Coast. Florida, wow, and the rest of the East Coast. And you can also see the front moving really fast. The storms and everything associated with the front moving really quickly, being pushed northward.
They're moving along the front. The front is hardly moving at all. It's like
Yeah.
weird.
It's like-
Is that a cold front or is it a stationary front? Or I mean, I don't. I was
think
looking
it
at our
was a cold
forecast,
front.
and the next
Yeah.
week we're going to be in the 80s. So I don't think it's
Yeah,
going
I
to peak
think
in
it,
here.
no, regrettably.
weird.
I'm sure Patrick will highlight that later.
Sorry. Steal your thunder.
Yeah, so other than, Francine, which doesn't really have any rain left, not a lot going on in this area, or for us, really. So, oh yeah, do you want to show your Francine loops?
Sure.
Pete made some pretty cool loops of Francine, its beginnings, which arguably look a lot cooler than it does now. This is it in radar. You can see it start to form down here, and it will gradually make its way northward into the U.S. Cycling pretty quickly. And yeah, these were the heaviest regions impacted. Southern Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, saw a lot of flooding, a lot of rain.
It starts at 0Z on the 9th and goes through whatever time I made the loop this morning. It was weird. There was that blow up right as it came on shore that dumped down New Orleans, like right there. Heard they got, I don't know the time frame, but they had like over 6 inches of rain, and it was like in a couple hours. So I'm like, oh, I should have saved that.
Lots of flooding to be dealt with down there.
I wonder if that's going to impact us for AMS at all, because AMS is in New Orleans. If there's going to be like issues with,
I guess it depends on how fast they.
and that's January. So I
Recover.
don't know.
I don't know.
Oh, right.
Let's see. There's that.
There's an IR loop.
This is IR, same time frame. I think this is really cool, but if you watch, you can see a lot of initiation off of the island south of here with like, watch, it just blows up and then immediately dissipates as soon as it gets over the ocean. Yeah, you can see how strong it was, especially in formation and as it gets up to the coastal US, because all these dark
Right here
and paint
almost.
colors.
So it just moves.
Look at that.
And then it's done.
And then it's like, yeah, done. Now it's just gonna kind of hang up here for a little while until it dissipates out fully.
I do save this imagery too, so if you see something interesting on the website and you want me to make a longer loop or you want me to save it or something, let me know. I can make that happen. I don't want to be going to.
Oh my gosh, I forgot. Yeah, this one was cool.
In this one, the blues and the greens are mostly cloud, blues and whites are where it's moister or cooler, and yellows and oranges are where it's drier or warmer. Generally, usually lower in the atmosphere. Looks like a water wave.
I know, look at that
crashing.
cloud. That's awesome.
I could
Places
send
all
out the
way up
links to
here
these
are
MBAs.
getting the cloud bands, even though the storm was still down here. And then as it moves up into the continent, you can start to see the dry air kind of wrapping around into it as it gets going.
The stuff off the islands too, you can see the
That too.
convection right there.
There it goes.
Wow.
So pretty cool.
Is there something else you want to show?
I forgot to show, if you could go back to the other watch links page. Scroll down a ways to like, there's a smoke section. And then that one. This is a map of where all the smoke's at, which has regrettably been pretty useful in the past couple of years. If you could click maps, please. So if you're like me, you're kind of tired of it constantly being smoky. I like to have my windows open. I don't like all the smoke that comes with it. So we're starting to get a little better. This region where we could see the smoke in satellite where it looked a lot more prominent. They're in the medium category. The color's just kind of similar, so it's a little hard to tell. Yeah, lots of people in the medium category, especially up into Ontario and over the US Northeast. We, thankfully, smoke has moved to the Northeast, which means we are now just in the light category. So, you know, as it gets colder, hopefully, fingers crossed, hopefully, fires will start to go out. We'll be free of smoke. Hopefully soon. Fingers crossed. Okay. So with all that, if you could go to the super peaks, please. We'll go to the super peak maps, look at all the conditions that we've had over the past week or so. And we're going to do a top-down analysis. So we're starting at the top of the atmosphere. If I could have 250, please, the loop, if that's okay.
Technically 3/4 of the way down.
Well, yeah.
I guess 3/4 of the way up.
I looked at the upper ones. There's not much going on up
Yeah,
there.
that's fair.
Can I
It's
have
the part of the atmosphere we care about.
True.
Other people probably skewer me for that. What do you want?
The loop, please.
Sure.
Then if you could stop it and we can step through, that would be cool. Okay, awesome. So this is 250 millibars. This purple and gray shading is the jet. So anywhere where we have this dark purple shading, that's higher jet level winds, usually like a jet streak, or at the very least, stronger jet winds. So as you all can see, the jet's mostly confined to the northern portions of the hemisphere. There is a bit of a trough pattern. It dips down. Wisconsin's right at the axis of the trough. But the jet is pretty much staying in the north. It hangs out, goes around Alaska, back up into Canada, and out of our view here. But if we skip forward...
That was last week when we were kind of cool around here still, right?
Yes, yeah. We got cooler temperatures. That probably helped out in it, because it all trickles down to the surface, but up here, we had a bit of a trough giving us air from Canada. So, if we could step forward a little, please. Yeah, that low kind of, at this level, the trough progresses, deepens, moves off of northeastern Canada. And if we look right here, you'll see we're starting to get jet streaks on the west coast and the east coast of North America. Climatologically, that's where we generally see our strongest jet streaks. So this really makes sense. This is a pretty good image of it in my mind, of where the strongest jets usually tend to be. Yeah, and so, is this the end? No, we keep skipping forward. Yeah, so it hangs out. There's a bit of a wavier pattern to end this. There's a bit of a trough. Our jet winds kind of die down. There's hints at streaks, but none really except off of the west coast. So this is today. We started last Friday, led us all the way to here. But ultimately, you know, other than the tropical storm, not a lot going on south of here.
Did we see any outflow from the storm?
Not yet, but it might, it wants to hint at it a little bit.
Maybe this over here.
Yeah, maybe. So, if we drop down to 500 millibars, please. Here's that same trough that we saw in the jet structure, associated low pressure system. There's also a decent low off the coast of Alaska. And as we step forward, this low is kind of weird because as it goes on, it almost looks like it gets stronger. It almost looks like it disappears for a second, but then it pops right back up, deepens, but it only stays in northern Canada. So we're fine with that. And then, there's Francine, chilling right over Arkansas, where we saw it on the satellite. If we go back,
Mr. Earl.
yes, please. So, could you step forward again, please? So, if we keep going, there's a low that's gonna form. Let me see. Yeah. Starts right about here. There was a bit of a short-lived trough that started right up here over the Aleutians, and if we track it down, it's deepened into this. And if we keep going, this is the low that is giving that cold front. It's dipping through the U.S. with that weird storm system that we saw that's moving northward. So yeah, it's pretty cool to see how something that started way up in Alaska, the Aleutians, is already starting to impact the Dakotas, at least today, in almost less than a week. So pretty cool there. And then we go to 850, please. Okay, so same suspects we saw before. This is that low that was associated with the trough that we saw at upper levels. Here's that low that develops until it moves off. And then if we step forward, right? Oh, go back one. This little lip thing right here is going to be the first developments of the low that is producing that pretty strong cold front and system that we see currently. So it's already visible on Monday, and it's Friday. It's still here making weather for the Dakotas. So if we could step forward, please. You can also see Francine is starting to see at this level. If we back up a little bit, sorry. Already on Monday, you can see the beginnings of it at this level, kind of down near the Yucatan. And as we step forward, you just see it start to deepen and deepen until it hits the U.S. So that's where we are now. The low is still there. So far it's looking pretty stacked and high. Low, if we want, we can track the low from Alaska. Starts here, keeps moving southward our way. Gets a little lost in the mountain topography, but that's okay, because in the next step...
Well, most of this is below ground, so that's...
Right.
That's why a lot of times at this level, especially, things will get washed out as they move through there, and then they seem to come back when they come out.
And then there it is. It's back. So, yeah. See the evolution of
was
this
that
low.
the ice storm down in the Pacific?
Oh, yeah. That's the start of the development of, what's his name? Ileana, I believe. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
I was gonna say Irene, so don't look to me for hurricane names.
So, yeah. Down in this region, pretty busy time for tropical storm developments, right? In just the span of a week, we had Francine form and dissipate, and now we've got Ileana also starting to develop. And we'll see where that storm goes. Yeah, and just for completion, can we see 925? So, yeah. Same story as usual. We step through. You can see the low of Francine start to form pretty early. Move up to the U.S. Similarly, you can see that low from Alaska track down and slowly become our current weather maker, or soon to be potential weather maker. There. You can also, at this level, start to make out the cold front associated with this low, just because the shifted winds, these are fully southerly, whereas over here, they're trending more westerly to northerly. So, yeah, that's the current state of where things are. Not a lot going on for Wisconsin. Our weather's been pretty boring as of lately, unless you count, smoke constantly in the air. That's about it. Lots of flooding in the southeast because of Francine. I almost said Florence.
No, it's contagious.
And then, yeah, this tropical storm development will be something to watch for as well. But with that, take any
Somebody was
questions.
saying they saw a sundog in the outflow, because some of the cirrus that we're seeing here is outflow from Francine. And there was a sundog last night, just around before sunset, it was like, what, 6 o'clock, something like that. That's kind of cool. And the sun's been pretty active too, so keep an eye on spaceweather.com for potential northern lights action. Yeah,
Could we go back to 850? It looks like the winds were really fast in Nebraska. Yeah, right
Whoa.
there. That's 60
what?
knots, right? Wait, I can't read this.
I think that's the arrow, that's 50, right?
yeah, that looks like 50.
Wow.
Could we see it? Because it looked like there was like not no wind at 9:25, but could we see the, what's it called, the sounding at Nebraska? I don't know what the sighting are like.
That one?
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
definitely 50.
It's zooming.
I wonder if that's like associated with Francine, because it almost like, that's probably like, never mind, it's not the next jet. So that's probably like a low level jet, right?
I think you call that a low-level jet.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's also getting close to where we saw those storms out in front of that cold front, because it does stretch down a decent way. And, you know, we saw on like the satellite, those clouds at the upper levels were zooming.
Yeah.
So that might also be tied with that. There's just not much precipitation there, so it's harder to see with that.
I wonder like where it's getting its moisture from too, then, like, would it be like just like this, or not the surface, but like, is it like getting its moisture from like a little bit of Francine? Like, is it able to like, because presumably that brought a lot of moisture in the area?
Yeah, it could. I didn't look at the full flow, but depending how far south the winds are, it might be affecting moisture all the way, both from Francine and from the Gulf. Or, you know, some might have gotten stuck when it came from the Alaskan Gulf and just stayed with it all the way here. I didn't look at that. That's a good point. Any other questions? If not, Patrick's going to give us our forecast for the next couple of days.
Thank you. Thank you for sparing everyone from listening to me for 45 minutes. Could we start at weather.gov, please? So as Libby pointed out, it's been very boring here, very sunny and dry, and you'll see that that trend will continue, and I'll prove to you why. So first, looking at the map of the current hazards, we see flood watches associated with Francine, not as numerous as they once were, but there is some still ongoing precipitation in Tennessee, Alabama, and into Georgia. Heat advisories are down south. Other than this, and a couple air quality alerts, I don't know if everyone has seen, there's a pretty intense fire just outside of Los Angeles that looks very apocalyptic when you see downtown Los Angeles and then, you know, a huge fire in the mountains. This is all air quality alerts associated with that. Some air quality alerts associated with other fires in Idaho. Other than that, you can see at the current moment, not a lot going on. And that's because we only really have two main players, as Libby showed, Francine and then the upper level low that's been moving across the country here. And so if we could click on Wisconsin.
They had an earthquake in LA yesterday morning too, like a magnitude 4.7
That's right.
earthquake.
That's right. So Los Angeles is on fire and it's on getting earthquakes. So I don't know what they did to make somebody mad, but they did something. And then if we could click on Madison, just get a look at, and I'll focus on the text forecast. You can see if you look at the highs and lows, if you can see 80, 80, 80, 80, 80, 80, 80, and then 60s with only real rain chances Saturday night into Sunday. And so a good question would be, why do we see this pattern of relatively the same temperature and only, you know, isolated storm chances? So I'll answer that question in my weather discussion here. And as it's been so dry, if we could pull up the drought monitor, I haven't touched on this. Oh, first, if we could go to our the Weather Watch links and pull up the climate page first, please. At the very top, go back to weather. Yeah, and then these ones here. And we'll scroll down to the precip first. So this has been updated today. You can notice we had a really wet period from May to August with about 22 inches of rain during this time, but as of lately, the rain has kind of started to plateau. And even though we're running above normal, the normal line is this blue line here, we're beginning to develop some drought conditions here. You can kind of notice the grass has become green and dry. The leaves are starting to turn browner, and that's a function of we just haven't had a lot of rain recently. Even though we're running above normal, you could get all your rain on October 15th and then get nothing for the whole year. You would still be above normal, but you'd still be in a pretty significant drought because all that rain has just evaporated. So this is a sign of drier conditions that we've had, and we'll see this persist. And it actually is triggering, if we could pull up the drought monitor page. We are now currently in abnormally dry conditions, which hasn't happened since last, I don't know, April, March. It's been a while for this part of the country, but you can see we're in this yellow shading, which is abnormally dry. Not exactly a drought, just noting that it's been dry, and it looks like it'll stay dry, as I just showed in the weather.gov page. One other area I want to point your attention to is this Ohio, West Virginia. These are drought conditions in the extreme and exceptional, this red and dark red. This has never happened in this part of the country since the drought monitor has been in existence from 2001. And one thing I'll point out in the forecast is there's forecasted to be a development off the Carolinas moving up into this region. So anytime you have very dry conditions, you put a system that could dump a lot of precip on basically cement as land dries out, becomes cement. You're going to have flash flooding concerns in this part of the country, so that's something to watch as well. And maybe even a reason for all of the flood warnings and watches we've seen is because it's relatively dry in some of these regions affected by Francine as well. As you can see in this brown, orange, red coloring here. So could we pull up our GFS 8-day loop over Northern Hemisphere at 500, please? So we'll take a look at the 500 millibar charts, and I'll just focus on these. And if we could do the loop first, and I'll stop it. Yep, perfect. Then we can go to the front, first page, and let's go to tonight. Keep going, sorry, 0Z. So this is a look at 12 hours for essentially what Libby was showing. We can see we're under the influence of an upper level ridge. Here's the remnants of Francine. It's a discombobulated upper level low. It's not exactly strong, as noted by the geopotential heights. It has some vorticity in the color shading, but not a lot. And then this upper level low that we are tracking is beginning to move up and around this ridge. So the reason it's been so dry as of late is we've been under this influence of this ridge, and it's kind of just sat here. Nothing really has moved through which could move this ridge out of our way. And we'll watch this sort of continue going forward here. So if we could click maybe 24 hours in the future, 0Z tomorrow, so tomorrow evening, you can see this ridge has not really moved at all. We do get some appendages of the vorticity at 500 from the trough that began to move away. So this might be some forcing for our precipitation that's forecasted, but not anything substantially. Here's Francine still kind of existing over the southeast, becomes less pronounced as it once was. And then there's this weird vorticity strip that begins to develop on the south side of this ridge, which is something that's very odd. We could go back just a couple clicks. So you can see, even go one forward, please. Here we are. This is 15 UTC Saturday. You can see in the color shading, not particularly strong band of vorticity. If we step forward just a couple clicks, watch this just kind of, enhance locally. Become a pretty significant strip of vorticity on the downstream side of this trough and underneath this upper level ridge. And that is a function of, you have, if we could go back to the 15 UTC, please. We have this trough feature. It's more pronounced over the northeast and into Canada, but it still has some tendrils of it stretching all the way down over to the Atlantic off the coast of the United States. So you can make that out in the trough and the geopotential heights. And with it, associated with it, along the wind shift, you can see this nice band of vorticity, but not particularly strong, as I just said. If we step forward just 2 clicks, you'll watch this band, it becomes localized into a linear feature. You have this northerly flow on the downstream side of this ridge, coming up from southerly flow from whatever is hanging off the southeast. We go 2 more clicks, this becomes a significant band of vorticity. And the reason I point this out, one, it's weird to see this on the downstream side of a ridge. This ridge is actually classified, if we go forward just a couple clicks, you'll see around this upper level ridge there's vorticity all stretching around it. Normally you see a ridge that's completely void of a lot of vorticity, but this one, because of the dynamics happening, is going to be classified by a band of vorticity on its south. And you can see, you can make it out pretty well that this has connections all the way up into the trough, which forced its original development, which is now all the way near Greenland. You can see that nice band of vorticity. This is important because watch what happens over off the coast of the Carolinas as we step forward to, let's go to Monday at 0Z. Keep going, sorry. I mean Tuesday at 0Z. Look what begins to form here off the coast of the Carolinas. This is an interesting development. I'm not sure if it's going to be tropical in nature, but it develops off the southeast coast and begins to move towards the Carolinas. And if we go back a little bit, please, you can see it's part of its vorticity in upper levels is a function of that vortex band that formed from the trough that is now over Greenland, stretching all the way down underneath this upper level ridge. It begins to conglomerate with the development of this low at the surface, which we'll look at in a second here. But if we step forward now, you can just slowly click forward. We'll watch this development off the southeast coast. It becomes it rapidly develops, and then it begins to move into the coast and over those regions I highlighted that have pretty extreme drought at this time. And it's kind of making a bullseye. If you can look at the upper level flow, this is flow from the Gulf Coast running over the Atlantic. So you have two moisture sources that are now bringing moisture up into those regions that are under those drought conditions and would aid in the precipitation associated with that development here. What I haven't pointed out, there's another upper level trough that moves over the western portions of the United States. We're in this middle ground region. This almost looks like an exact replica of what we are seeing in upper level charts, where we have an upper level low over the western portion of the United States, some disturbance over the southeast, and we are in the inner ground, just dominated by an upper level ridge. We'll see if we just keep clicking forward here. Here's the remnants of that tropical system. We're still under the influence of an upper level ridge. And if we go all the way to the end of the loop here, nothing really changes. Even now, this looks like a replica of what's currently going on. Something over the southeast, upper level trough over the west, we're under a ridge. And so that's going to be the reasons why we stay dry. Number one, we don't really have any upper level forcings for ascent. We're under the dominance of this upper level ridge. This is probably bringing smoke from the fires in Canada. I would assume it's going to stay smoky. And then you have clear conditions, sun angle still high, we're still going to stay warm, and that's what we saw in the forecast with highs in the mid 80s, persisting for a while, and it looks like it's going to persist all the way to next weekend at the current time, unfortunately. As we want fall to start happening, it's not going to. Fall will currently, looks like it'll start beginning in the western portion of the United States. Hopefully it'll make its way towards us, but going forward a week, it doesn't look like it'll be fall here. It looks like it'll stay summer, unfortunately. Yeah?
What's that thing over like near Pennsylvania, like off the coast? Is that, I mean, I know it's really far out.
I honestly have not looked at that. I just saw that develop as well.
It's like 9 days out though. So.
That might be another, looks like it's tied to a trough, in Canada, but you still have a warm Atlantic. You still have, like I said, the sun angle's still pretty high. This might be another tropical system that might develop off the coast and
Huh.
do something. I haven't looked at that. But you can see, if we go back just 1 or 2 clicks, because of this upper level ridge sitting over us, this system actually moves from the northeast to the southwest, which is interesting.
Wow.
So it's kind of developing, you know, south of Connecticut and moving into Virginia, which is weird. But that's something also to watch, and as this moves, you can presume more rain for Ohio, West Virginia region, which was under those drought conditions still. And so that's all I had to present. It's going to be warm, it's going to be dry here. We can watch what happens over the southeast in the coming days, and then it'll remain unsettled over the western portions of the United States. And we'll be the beneficiaries of warm, dry air for a while. Yeah.
So is there like a kind of like pattern that typically keeps like highs just over us for like weeks? Like what big big level dynamic is like responsible for this?
It could be if you set up a very strong high at upper levels, which is what this ridge has been. It takes a lot to move this feature out. It would take a pretty strong trough that would have to be pronounced, you know, pretty far south, because this is now, if we go back actually, let's go back to closer to now. And keep going. You can see this high just persists, right? The trough and the wave pattern is largely moving, you know, well around this ridge. It's not really, there's not anything substantial, you know, on the same latitude line that could move this trough or this ridge out of the way. And if we keep watching this loop, we'll see that persists. You get strong developments over the western portion of the United States, but all of them move quickly northward, and none of them really dislodge the ridge that's sitting over us. So I'm not sure about patterns. I know there's, you know, well researched where you can develop upper level ridges and they just remain, but it looks like we're just in the middle of a trough ridge trough pattern. And because you have developing troughs that keep developing, we're going to stay, you know, you must have, or as you develop troughs, you're going to develop downstream ridges per dynamics, and so that looks like that might be one thing that's keeping the ridge there for a long time. Any other questions or comments? Anyone want to see anything else? Oh, here's a look at the temperatures, yeah. So you can see we remain, this is at 850, we remain fairly warm. And it looks like at the very end of this loop, here's a shot of cold air that might begin to make its way into the northern portions of the United States, pulling air all the way from the poles essentially. But because you have warmth building and it keeps moving northward, it's going to take a significant system to bring some cold air towards us. So, yeah.
Do you know if that 100-degree streak is still alive in Phoenix?
Yes, it is. I'm going to point that out once this loops here. 10 inches, 10 plus inches of rain.
Should we go back to the 850 or?
Could you go to weather.gov actually, please? This will be what I'll end on here. If we could go back, click, and one more. If we could click on where Phoenix is, and scroll down, we'll click on Phoenix. It's been 100 degrees. It still has remained 100 degrees. It looks like tomorrow the high is only 99, which will mean 115 days in a row of 100 degrees.
Wow.
That's more than 3 months. That sounds terrible to me. I think they've also gotten a couple of 110 plus degrees in that time, so these are all-time records being beat by 20 plus days. And the records were set last year.
Yeah, I don't think it was contiguous, but I thought there were over 50, 110
Yes.
plus degrees, 56 I thought I heard.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and it looks like they'll cool down to the 80s as well.
It's a dry heat though, right?
Yeah, it's a dry heat. Sure. It's just 100 degrees for
It's still hot.
4 months.
It's
Yeah.
odd.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Thank you,
All right.
Libby. We'll see you next
Thanks,
week.
Libby. Thanks, Patrick.
the dew point's 45.
Hmm?
So the dew point's 45. That's high for Phoenix.
It is monsoon.